County?
It was acquired by King.
Oh, okay. I've been on that ranch before.
Yeah.
So, all right. Well, I'll talk a little bit about what we do at the Food Product and Safety Lab, and then I think I want to leave more room for questions because I think that's the best way to get what we need to do. I just put some slides out here so you guys can take them home. The first part that we're talking about is actually the small animals. I will include beef, pork, lamb here just so you can get an idea. This is kind of the rough numbers of what we process a year at the University of Arizona. So 2020, this year we're still not done, so I haven't put them up there, but we did 651 head of beef. We did pork, about 207. You can see some of the pork numbers decline, some lamb. They kind of remain fairly the same. And goats actually have declined the number of goats that we've done in the last year. Mostly because we increased so much in beef production. Given COVID, last year was a pretty good year for a lot of the processors. They were able to make some money actually. It's not really easy to make money in slaughtering, processing of animals, but last year because the shortages in the meat stores and the grocery stores, they were able to actually get some money for what they were doing. So this is kind of a little overview of the industry in terms of processed animals under Arizona Department of Ag inspection. Now, if you're going to sell your meat at a farmer's market or your own grocery store, it has to be inspected. Legally, it has to be inspected. I know there are some places that might sell you the live animal and then you take it home and you do the butchering yourself. That's legal, but not if you're doing it at the same place. I've heard of some places that you can go buy a goat and you can kill it right there and then take it home, which is really not the way it's supposed to be done. But in Arizona, we have both USDA inspection and ADA. Both of those programs work. If you are selling within the state of Arizona, you can be under Arizona Department of Ag, or if you want to ship across state lines, you can be USDA inspected. Okay? It's still the same requirements for both. A lot of people say, well, if I'm doing it already for Arizona Department of Ag, might as well do it for across the world or across the United States, and I can actually ship, right? So if you're starting a small farm, you can then ship, let's say, goat chops to New York. You sell online and just ship all over the country. By having USDA, you can do that. Is this your clicker? This is old.
It's not working.
It's old. We were talking on the drive up here. Dr. Tronstadt has a 91 Honda. We drove up here. It has 373,000 miles. And it's still going. I hope it makes it to the farm. But being an economics guy, he saves a lot of money. I don't know what he's going to do with it when he passes away.
The kids don't want it, I tell you.
The kids don't want the money? I bet they want the money though. I would spend it. Okay, so in terms of state inspected, you can see the numbers a little bit higher. So a lot of these goats are actually killed here in the valley, and they end up, goats, lamb, and sheep, they end up in the Phoenix area, right? There's some populations that will eat more of this product than others. Being a typical American, probably you don't like it. Typical American, I would say, right? How many of you actually like goat meat? Okay, I'm with you on that one. How about lamb? Okay, so there's a few, right? Now, what people don't like about this product is the off taste, right? They are eating goat expecting it to taste like beef. And that's not what you're supposed to be doing. So, in USDA inspection, there's really not a lot of places that slaughter goats. And I put those numbers, about 300, 200 or so. We had a plant down in Cochise County that was doing more goat and lamb, but they recently sold out to a place that mostly does cattle now. So, not a lot of this meat being produced, so there is an opportunity for it. We sell goat and lamb at the University of Arizona, and I can tell you that there's someone every week that asks for it. We are just not, we don't have enough to actually supply at the moment, right? So one of the things I like to do is sometimes you have a young, well-fed animal and you want to get rid of it, we offer you a way to sell it to us and we will market it, right? Similar to what I do with Chandler FFA. We buy their chickens, they raise a whole bunch of chickens, meat chickens, and we buy it, they process them, we buy it, we resell it, that way they can keep on producing it, and we offer that storefront so they can sell it. I gotta get you a new one. I have two of these. There you go. So we talked a little bit about the trend, but you can see the goat numbers have gone down. And maybe because we don't know how to cook it. How many of you know how to cook goat really good? What's your recipe?
So you have to use ginger because it gets the smell out.
Okay.
You have to use ginger, and then I sometimes also marinate in yogurt, so that also gets the smell out, because goat is very strong scent to it.
Okay. I think that one of the key things is age, right? Obviously, if you're killing them older, they will have that smell.
The longer and the lower temperature that you cook them at, the better they are, because they're designed to like break apart. You want them in like a stew or a curry or something like that, where they've been sitting there all day just marinating and everything, getting that slow braise.
Anyone else want to share the recipe?
I heard a weird one I did with a friend where you like smoke it, like where you have a fire basically, but that's like a whole goat thing. I can't remember what it's called.
Was it a young goat or no?
It was a young goat. He was from like Monterey, and I guess it's a thing out there.
That's
it's
a
like
thing.
a thing where you split a goat that way, but it was really complicated. You like build a fire next to it and kind of smoke it over time.
Yeah, yeah.
It looks-
I was invited to Monterey. This is in northern Mexico, kind of south of Texas. I was invited to judge a cattle show, and one of their traditional meals is goat. So, but they call it cabrito, which is not a really old goat. It's actually a suckling. It's still nursing when probably the thing looks almost like a rabbit. But they actually open them up and put them, they put a bed of coals, they start a fire, and then they kind of open up like this, they put them all around that fire. Right? And that's how they cook it. Slowly cook it. They put just a few spices on there. That was a good, I was there two months ago, and that was a really good way to eat a goat. They serve you tortillas, onions, salsa, and that was great. The last goat that I had was in Sinaloa. I went to visit a plant for, they wanted to do some meat quality training for their employees. So it's funny because one day I'm doing the training, I look out the window, they're killing a goat outside. And the next day we had goat, so. Yeah. It was so good. It was delicious. They called it peppered goat, but it was more like a soup. And it was, I don't know the exact recipe, but I can tell you that's probably one of the best goat that I've ever had. So one of the things is we want to make sure our customers have that experience that when they first eat it, they love it, right? So how are you going to do that? You as a producer of goat, how are you going to do it? And this is not just for goat, this is for anything that we're producing.
You give them ideas on how to cook it.
Great, that's the best thing you can do. You provide it and you give them an idea of how to cook it. Maybe a recipe, right? Okay, so you have this animal that has all these parts. So there is a way to cook the leg, and there's a way to cook the chops, there's a way to eat the shoulder, right? You should cook them a little bit different. And then you find a recipe that kind of provides everything that you need, and you know that they're going to love that no matter what. So you kind of start them off easy, right? How many of you like beer? You like beer? Yeah, he's like, I like beer. Did you like the really hoppy stuff, the IPAs and all that? Or you just one regular type of beer?
Like to a little bit of hops.
You liked a little bit of hops? Did you like them the first time?
No.
You kind of kept trying it?
Yeah.
Kept trying it. Right, you kind of increased your, so it's kind of the same thing you want to do. You want to introduce that product where that customer is actually, first enjoys it a little bit, then you kind of introduce stronger flavors, and then the next thing you know, they're going to like it, right? I still don't like IPA, but I'm not a big beer drinker. So there was a speaker, his name's Lowell Catlett, he was a dean at New Mexico State, and he used to say, you know what? It takes me about 3 Coors Light to get that flavor of the IPA out of my mouth. Anyways. I'll just put this over here. So lamb, in our case, we kind of remain fairly the same. One of the problems with doing lamb and goat is that they're so small, there's really not a lot of profit to be made for the small plant processors, right? And by the time you do a whole lamb, you almost can be done with a quarter beef or more. So weight-wise, you can do a lot more processing. And that's why a lot of processors don't want to take lamb or goat. Now, one thing we can do is, let's say we have a kill floor. You can have a little outlet retail shop where we go ahead and kill the animal and have a carcass. We ship it to you in a carcass form, and then you can take care of that. We can kill a lot more than we can process at our facility. So that's one way of looking at, how do I get into this business if I want to raise goat, lamb, is finding a way where are you going to cut that animal. How many of you are thinking about doing that, selling your own meat? Okay. So what's your plan right now?
Listening to you.
Listening to me?
Just trying to figure out a way to market it. Like you said, if you can kind of describe those meats as, like you describe a beer, like this one's heavier, this one's got a deeper body to it. I mean, nobody knows that lamb is actually a hypoallergenic meat. You can eat it if you're intolerant to beef. So just trying to figure out how to market it first so that we have that demand before the supply, I guess.
Yeah, so that's a good point. You want to make sure you have a place to sell it. A lot of people start off the other way. They're like, I'm going to raise the best meat, and then it's kind of like, if you build it, they will come. They have that idea. Sometimes they never come, and they end up with a whole bunch of meat. So you got to figure out where you're selling. How many of you are in the middle of the city or close to it? I mean, that's like the best spot because you have a big population center. So if I'm trying to sell here in Florence, and this is only where I want to sell, I don't want to move out of here. How many people live in Florence?
Oh, 7,500.
7,500.
Unincarcerated.
Okay. Yeah, that's how I knew about Florence too. That's where I came. I lived in Douglas, Arizona, and that's a border town. So you always heard people got in trouble because of smuggling drugs. I was like, where are they? Oh, in Florence. It's like, where's Florence? It's like, anyways. I lost my train of thought now. So population centers. If you are trying to sell this meat here in Florence, you might have 1 or 2 customers, and that's great. You have a freezer at home and you can sell it there. But the idea is to take it to the city where you can expose that meat to 7 million people. So now that you have 7 million people looking at it, even if you get 1% of that to come and buy your meat, I mean, you got it made, right? The problem is some people don't want to go and do it. And it takes a lot of work to go out there because most of this gets sold at farmers markets, Saturday, Sunday. It's like,
Well, and our post office, Lord love them, isn't the way I'd want to go anyway. So we're kind of looking at online shipping too, which is kind of a hot mess.
and that's a way to look at it too. Online. Now, what do you have to do to sell online? How many of you like to buy meat online? Anyone here would buy meat online?
Would.
I mean, Omaha Steaks, but
But they have a reputation now,
right,
right? Omaha Steaks has a reputation that you're gonna get a good product.
right.
So what do you have to do to sell online? Build that reputation where people can trust you. And part of that reputation is consistency. So you have to make sure that if you're selling online, you have a consistent product every time. And to do that, you have to make sure your processor, whoever's doing your cutting, is cutting the product every time. And then you have to raise the animal the same every time. And if you have an animal that's maybe doesn't meet your specifications, that you set your specifications, you know, my animal's gonna have this much fat, it's gonna have this much muscle, et cetera, et cetera. And let's say if you don't meet it, you're forced to put it in a different way or selling it a different way.
It's the family freezer.
Your family freezer, or you grind it up and make burger or whatever.
I have a
So,
question.
yes,
So you said Florence, you have 2 customers, but Florence is a food desert. There's not a grocery store here. Our closest grocery store is in Coolidge. So you think that we wouldn't be as successful here?
I'm not saying you wouldn't be as successful. I'm saying
Yeah.
if you wanna scale up, right, you can sell in Florence. Now, what's the average medium income in Florence?
It's actually higher than
Okay,
Florence.
so then you figure out who you're gonna be selling to, and you market to those people, right? Now, depending on what you're selling, again, beef is a lot easier to sell, in my opinion, because everyone likes beef. So if you're selling goats, lamb, you gotta figure out if these people here would buy it. But then, what I was trying to say is that out of the 7,500 people, if you're trying to sell goat to those people, I'm not saying meat in general, but goat, how many of those would like it? Let's say 1%, versus 1% of 7 million in Phoenix area. Yes,
How much does, so you keep mentioning Phoenix, how much does it vary, like Tucson, other than Tucson being like smaller? Because I'm really looking at like southern Arizona more, like.
Tucson is a great place
Okay.
to sell, because even though Phoenix has more people, I live in Tucson, I think people in Tucson have more of an open mind to foods.
Okay.
Tucson in general has a lot of different types of foods around. So I think that's a good place to and you have 1 million people there, I mean, that's a good population center too.
Okay, yeah. I didn't know if there was like some level, because Phoenix is humongous now.
Right, so you can find all kind of customers in Phoenix, right?
Yeah,
But the smaller you get, the less type of people you're gonna have.
for sure, yeah.
Yes,
I'm just curious, if you connect with people who do process what you sell, if they do it in a certain way, what would it take to, let's say, excite the Middle Eastern cultures? Because they eat lamb and goat, right? There's a whole market for that. Is that strictly in the East, or?
no, there's a lot in Phoenix, and that's, all the Arizona slaughter that we saw is mostly for those cultures. So the only problem that I would say, and this is my own experience, I don't know if everyone has that, a lot of these Middle Eastern cultures, they don't want to pay more than, they much rather you sell them the animal, they actually kill it and take the organs and everything else. And I've run into that where it was like, we sell our goat at $7.50 a pound, the whole carcass. They're like, no, that's too much, I want it at $4. Like, well, too bad. Right? I mean, I'd much rather not kill a goat if they're kind of the similar as the gentleman here with the pigs. He was raising pigs to go give them away at the market. That you'd run out of business pretty quick. Yes.
What is the law regarding processing your own meat and selling it out of your own place?
Legally, you cannot do that.
And so, say I want to bypass the processor and do the processing myself, how do I get inspected?
To get inspected, you have to build a plant that is safe. It doesn't have to be a big plant. For slaughter of goats, small animals, it's easy to do because you don't have that much space needed. Right, a beef, you have to have the hanging, etc. But if you want to build a plant, I mean, you can do a goat slaughter in a quarter of this room. Right? So it's actually a lot easier to do a small plant than it is to do one for large animal. Because you don't need that really heavy, a goat weighs 100, 150 pounds at most. So once you gut it, etc., you're looking at 50, 70 pounds hanging on a rope versus 400 pounds per beef animal. So it's actually not that expensive to build a small plant if you want to do it yourself. And to find out about the rules, Arizona Department of Ag can help you there, or USDA can help you get those rules. The plant has to be accessible. You have to have good drainage. You have to have, I would say, refrigeration for your meat, and it doesn't have to be too big. Again, if you're doing 1 or 2 a week or less, or let's say even 10 a week, they sell coolers that you can put. You can even have like something to push them in, hanging in there. I can give you different ideas, but the rules are online with the Arizona Department of Agriculture, and it's the same for USDA.
And are there any mobile processors that are licensed or?
Yeah, there's one up in northern Arizona, Southwest Processing, I think it's called.
You're licensed as well, yeah.
We're licensed to process for you, so we can do it under USDA. Let's say we charge $125 per goat or lamb, so that's what we charge to get it processed. And again, we don't make a lot of money on those, so if you could do it yourself, you're saving that, especially if you're building the place close to your house, so you're saving travel and all that. Yeah.
Do you have inspectors that are accessible enough to have like a monthly, say you slaughter and process 10 animals, by yourself a month, do you have an inspector available to do that?
Yes. So this one is kind of like the Field of Dreams. If you build it, they have to inspect it.
Okay.
So it is a rule that if you build a plant, obviously you're not going to build it in the middle of nowhere, but if you build a plant, they have to staff it. And if you're slaughtering, the inspector has to be there for every animal you slaughter. If you are just processing, they have to be there once a day, maybe for an hour or 2 hour period. Right? Yes. So for us, we did 30 beef last week. The inspector looked at every single animal, made sure they were healthy, alive, and then they looked at the carcasses and the organs and everything else. That's what they do. So the inspector's there, and it is a free, you don't pay for inspection.
Wow.
There's no cost for inspection. A lot of people think that you pay for the inspection, but there is no cost for inspection.
You have to provide them a room though.
Yeah, but the room, I've seen plants that have a room this size. I mean, you can put them in a closet. I've seen plants that have a room bigger, a closet's bigger than some of these rooms. So, obviously, the better you treat them, the better they're going to treat you. Sometimes they are people too, and they.
Do you ever do anything with buffalo, or do you have anybody?
We have slaughtered buffalo before. Now, we used to do it quite a bit. We used a 30-30 to put them down. And the university kind of said, I don't know, having weapons on campus, especially with all the shootings that were going on and stuff, they kind of, and we only did about 10 a year, so I said, you know what, we're not going to do buffalo, but you can slaughter buffalo.
So some of the more common animals, you see a lot of uses for the extended meats, like the sweet meats and the organs and stuff. For goat, do you see that, or is that just lost? Like, do people not really consume the tripe or the brain? You see like cow and pork too.
Yeah, they can consume heads. You can sell the head.
And people buy it.
All the organs are sold, yes.
Okay.
There's usually not a lot of value of the hide, but if you can clean the intestines, some people will buy them.
Okay.
So there is a value to
So
those.
it's pretty, you can sell the whole thing pretty consistently. People are.
Right. The only thing that, again, the hide is not, there's really not a lot of value in the hide, but everything else I think you can sell, and then you can create pet treats, stuff that you can't sell. You had a question, sir?
Yeah, just to clarify for me, I guess, so what's the feasibility if you just pay the inspector to inspect and kill the animal? Could you process it yourself and then sell the meat, or do you have to have your own processing plant? Like what you were saying, I guess if it's, you just kill it and cut it, quarter it, and then then would that be legal for me to process my own meat after I had had it inspected?
Are you gonna eat it yourself or are you gonna ship it out?
Ship it out or sell it?
Okay, so you can be inspected just for slaughter. And let's say you have a retail store up front, you don't need to be inspected to sell retail. Okay? You will be inspected by the county, but not by USDA or ADA.
Okay.
You can kill, and then you can ship the meat to another place that they can do the processing. That's allowed. If you want to process yourself and then ship pieces, you have to be inspected if you're processing that carcass. So, but that's the same inspector, and you're not paying for that. That's free to them. You have to follow the rules and regulations.
Okay.